Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Nanette Kennedy with the Humanities Team and the Evolution Revolution. And we are reading Neale Donald Walsch's Conversations with God, Book 3. And we are on Chapter 19. And Linda, whenever you feel ready to read. I know we were going to discuss the previous chapter, but it's been so long since we read it. I think we should just move forward.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, chapter 19. This is Neale speaking. What are the beings like on other planets physically? Well, take your pick. There are as many varieties of beings as there are species of life on your planet. Actually, more. Are there beings that look very much like us? Of course. Some look exactly like you, given minor variations. Well, how do they live? What do they eat? How are they dressed? In what way do they communicate? I want to learn all about ETs here. Come on, out with it. I understand your curiosity, yet these books are not being given to you to satisfy curiosity. The purpose of our conversation is to bring a message to your world. Just a few questions, and they're more than curiosities. We may have something to learn here, or more accurately, to remember. That really is more accurate, for you have nothing to learn, but merely to remember who you really are. Well, you made that wonderfully clear in Book 1. Do these beings on other planets remember who they are? You might expect all beings elsewhere are in various stages of evolution, but in what you have here termed highly evolved cultures, yes, the beings have remembered. How do they live, work, travel, communicate? Travel, as you know it in our culture, does not exist in highly evolved societies. Technology has advanced far beyond the necessity of using fossil fuels to drive engines embedded in huge machines that move bodies around. In addition to what has been provided by new physical technologies, understandings of the mind and the very nature of physicality itself have also advanced. As a result, the combination of these two types of evolutionary advances, it has become possible for Hebes to disassemble and reassemble their bodies at will, allowing most beings in most highly evolved cultures to be wherever they choose, whenever they choose. Including light years across the universe? Yes. In most cases, yes. Such long-distance travel across galaxies is done like a stone skipping across water. No attempt is made to go through the matrix, which is the universe, but rather to skip around on it. That is the best imagery which can be found in your language to explain the physics of it. As for what you call in your society work, such a concept does not exist in most Hebe cultures. Tasks are performed and activities are undertaken based purely on what a being loves to do and sees as the highest expression of itself. Well, that's super if one could do that, but how does the menial labor get done? Well, the concept of menial labor does not exist. What you would label as menial in your society is often the most highly honored in the world of highly evolved beings. Hebes who do the daily tasks that must be done for a society to exist and to function are the most highly rewarded, highly decorated workers in the service of all. I put the word workers in quotes here because to be a Hebe, this is not considered work at all, but the highest form of self-fulfillment. The ideas and experiences that humans have created around self-expression, which you've called work, are simply not a part of the Hebe culture. Drudgery, overtime, pressure, and similar self-created experiences are not chosen by highly evolved beings, who, among other things, are not attempting to get ahead, rise to the top, or be successful. The very concept of success, as you have defined it, is foreign to a Hebe precisely because its opposite, failure, does not exist. Well, then how do Hebes ever have an experience of accomplishment or achievement? Well, not through the construction of an elaborate value system surrounding competition, winning, and losing, as is done in most human societies and activities, even and especially in your schools, but rather through a deep understanding of what real value is in a society and a true appreciation for it. Achieving is defined as doing what brings value, not doing what brings fame and fortune, whether it is of value or not. Well, then the Hebes do have a value system. Oh, yes, of course. But one very unlike most humans. Hebes value that which produces benefit to all. Well, so do we. Yes, but you define benefit so differently. You see greater benefit in throwing a little white sphere at a man with a bat, or taking off one's clothes off on a big silver screen, than in leading offspring to remember life's greatest truths, or sourcing a society's spiritual sustenance. So you honor and pay baseball players and movie stars more than you do teachers and ministers. In this, you have everything backward, given where you say that you want to go as a society. You have not developed very keen powers of observation. Hebes always see what's so and do what works. Humans very often do not. Hebes do not honor those who teach or minister because it is morally right. They do so because it is what works, given where they choose for their society to go. Yes, but still, there are these value structures. There must be haves and have-nots. So in Hebes societies, it's the teachers who are rich and famous and the ball players who are poor. There are no have-nots in a Hebes society. No one lives in the depths of degradation to which you have allowed many humans to fall. And no one dies of starvation, as 400 children an hour and 30,000 people a day do on your planet. And there is no such thing as a life of quiet desperation, as there is in human work cultures. No, in Hebes society, there is no such thing as the destitute and the poor. Well, how have they avoided that? How? By applying two basic principles. We are all one. There's enough. Hebes have an awareness of sufficiency and a consciousness that creates it. Through the Hebe consciousness of the interrelatedness of all things, nothing is wasted or destroyed of the natural resources on a Hebe's home planet. This leaves plenty for everyone. Hence, there's enough. The human consciousness of insufficiency, of not enoughness, is the root cause of all worry, all pressure, all competition, all jealousy, all anger, all conflict, and ultimately all killing on your planet. This plus the human insistence on believing in separation rather than the unity of all things is what has created 90% of the misery in your lives, the sadness in your history, and the impotence of your previous efforts to make things better for everyone. If you would change these two elements in your consciousness, everything would shift. How? I want to do that, but I don't know how. Give me a tool, not just platitudes. Good, that's fair. So here's a tool. Act as if. Act as if you were all one. Just start acting that way tomorrow. See everyone as you, just having a difficult time. See everyone as you, just wanting a fair chance. See everyone as you, just having a different experience. Try it. Just go around tomorrow and try it. See everyone through new eyes. Then start acting as if there's enough. If you had enough money, enough love, enough time, what would you do differently? Would you share more openly, freely, equitably? That's interesting because we're doing exactly that with our natural resources and being criticized by ecologists for it. I mean, we're acting as if there's enough. What's really interesting is that you act as if the things which you think benefit you are in short supply. So you watch your supply of that very carefully, often even hoarding those things. Yet you play fast and loose with your environment, natural resources, and ecology. So it can only be assumed that you do not think the environment, natural resources, and your ecology benefits you, or that we are acting as if there's enough. But you aren't. If you were, I don't know, I just wish everyone were on mute. I'm just getting a lot of static in my ear. It's distracting to read. Okay, but you aren't. If you were, you would share these resources more equitably. Yet right now, 1/5 of the world's people are using 4/5 of the world's resources. And you show no signs of changing that equation. There is enough for everybody if you would stop thoughtlessly squandering all of it on a privileged few. If all people used resources wisely, you would use less than you do with a few people using them unwisely. Use the resources. Don't abuse the resources. That's all the ecologists are saying. Well, I'm depressed again. You keep making me depressed. You're something, you know that? You're driving down a lonely road, lost, and having forgotten how to get where you say you want to go. Someone comes along and gives you directions. Eureka! You're ecstatic, right? No, you're depressed. Amazing. Well, I'm depressed because I don't see us taking these directions. I don't see us even wanting to. I see us marching right into a wall. And yes, it depresses me. Well, you're not using your powers of observation. I see hundreds of thousands of people cheering as they read this. I see millions recognizing the simple truths here. And I see a new force for change growing in intensity on your planet. Entire thought systems are being discarded. Ways of governing yourselves are being abandoned. Economic policies are being revised. Spiritual truths are being re-examined. Your race is awakening. The notices and observations on these pages need not be a source of discouragement. That you recognize them as truth can be tremendously encouraging if you allow this to be the fuel that drives the engine of change. You are the change agent. You are the one who can make a difference in how humans create and experience their lives. How? What can I do? Be the difference. Be the change. Embody the consciousness of we are all one, and there's enough. Change yourself. Change the world. You have given yourself this book and all the conversation with God material so that you might remember once again how it was to live as highly evolved beings. We lived this way once before, didn't we? You mentioned that earlier, that we had lived like this once before. Yes, and in what you would call ancient times and ancient civilizations. Most of what I have been describing here has been experienced by your race before. Well, now a part of me wants to be even more depressed. You mean that we got there and then we lost it all? Oh, what's the point of this going around in circles that we're doing? Evolution. Evolution's not a straight line. You have a chance now to recreate the best experiences of your ancient civilizations while avoiding the worst. You don't have to let personal egos and advanced technology destroy your society this time. You can do it differently. You can make a difference. That could be very exciting to you if you allow it to be. Okay, I get it. And when I allow myself to think of it that way, I am excited and I will make a difference. Tell me more. I want to remember as much as I can about how it was with us in our advanced ancient civilization and how it is today with all the highly evolved beings. How do they live? They live in clusters or what you would call communities, but for the most part, they have abandoned their vision of what you call cities or nations. Why? Because cities became too big and no longer supported the purpose of clustering, but worked against that purpose. They produced crowded individuals instead of a clustered community. Well, it's the same on this planet. There's more of a sense of community in our small towns and villages, even in our wide open rural areas, than in most of our big cities. Yes, there's only one difference on that score between your world and the other planets we're now discussing, which is the inhabitants of those other planets have learned this. They have observed more closely what works. And we, on the other hand, keep creating larger and larger cities, even though we see that they're destroying our very way of life. Yes. We even take pride in our rankings. A metropolitan area moves up from number 12 to number 10 on our list of biggest cities, and everyone thinks that's a cause for celebration. Chambers of commerce actually advertise it. It is the mark of a primitive society to view regression as progress. You have said that before. You're getting me depressed again. More and more of you are no longer doing this. More and more of you are recreating small, intended communities. So do you think we should abandon our mega cities and return to our towns and villages? I don't have a preference about it one way or the other. I'm simply making an observation, as always. So what is your observation regarding why we continue to migrate to bigger and bigger cities, even though we see it's no good for us? Because many of you do not see that it is not good for you. You believe that grouping together in large cities solves problems, when it only creates them. It is true that in large cities, there are services, there are jobs, there are entertainments, which are not and cannot be found in smaller towns and villages. But your mistake is calling these things valuable, when, in fact, they are detrimental. You do have a point of view on this. You just gave yourself away. You said we made a mistake. If you're headed to San Jose, here we go again. Well, you insisting on calling observations judgments and statements of facts preferences, and I know you are seeking greater accuracy in your communications and in your perceptions, so I'm going to call you on this every time. If you are headed to San Jose, all the while saying you wish to go to Seattle, is it wrong for a bystander of whom you are asking directions to say that you have made a mistake? Is the bystander expressing a preference? I guess not. You guess not? Okay, he's not. Then what is he doing? He's merely saying what's so, given where we say we want to go. Excellent. You've got it. But you've made this point before, repeatedly. Why do I keep reverting to an idea about you as having preferences and judgments? Because that's the God who's supported by your mythology. And you will throw me into that category anytime you can. Besides, if I did have a preference, that would make everything easier for you. Then you wouldn't have to figure things out and come to your own conclusions. You'd just have to do as I say. Of course, you'd have no way of knowing what it is that I say, since you don't believe I've said anything for thousands of years. So you have no choice but to rely on those who claim to be teaching what I used to say during those days when I was actually communicating. But even this is a problem, because there are as many different teachers and teachings as there are hairs on your head. So you're right back where you started from, having to come to your own conclusions. Is there a way out of this maze and the cycle of misery that is created for the human race? Will we ever get it right? There is a way out, and you will get it right. You merely have to increase your observational skills. You have to better see what serves you. This is called evolution. Actually, you cannot not get it right. You cannot fail. It is merely a question of when, not whether. But aren't we running out of time on this planet? Oh, if that's your parameter, if you want to get it right on this planet, that is, while this particular planet still supports you, then within that context, you'd better hurry. How can we go faster? Help us. I am helping you. What do you suppose this dialogue is about? Okay, so give us some more help. You said a little bit ago that in highly evolved cultures on other planets, beings also abandoned the concept of nations. Why did they do that? Because they saw that a concept such as what you call nationalism works against their first guiding principle. We are all one. On the other hand, nationalism supports our second guiding principle, survival of the fittest. Exactly. You separate yourself into nations for reasons of survival and security, and produce just the opposite. Highly evolved beings refuse to join together in nations. They believe in simply one nation. You might even say they have formed one nation under God. Ah, clever. But do they have liberty and justice for all? Do you? Touché. The point is that all races and species are evolving, and evolution, the purpose of observing what serves you and making behavioral adaptations, seems to keep moving in one direction and away from another. It keeps moving towards unity and away from separation. This is not surprising, since unity is the ultimate truth, and evolution is just another word for movement toward truth. I also notice that observing what serves you and making behavioral adaptations sounds suspiciously like survival of the fittest, another one of our guiding principles. It does, doesn't it? So now it's time to observe that survival of the fittest, that is, evolution of the species, is not achieved, but indeed entire species have been doomed, have actually self-destructed by calling a process a principle. Oops, you lost me here. So the process called evolution. The process is called evolution. The principle which guides the process is what directs the course of your evolution. You are right. Evolution is survival of the fittest. That is the process. Yet do not confuse process with principle. If evolution and survival of the fittest are synonyms, and if you are claiming survival of the fittest as a guiding principle, then you are saying a guiding principle of evolution is evolution. Yet, that is the statement of a race which does not know that it can control the course of its own evolution. That is the statement of a species which thinks itself to be relegated to the status of observer of its own evolution. Because most people think that evolution is a process simply going on, not a process which they are directing according to certain principles. So the species is announcing, we evolve by the principle of, well, evolution. But they never say what that principle is, because they have confused the process and the principle. The species, on the other hand, which has become clear that evolution is a process, but a process over which the species has control, has not confused process with principle, but consciously chooses a principle which it uses to guide and direct its process. This is called conscious evolution, and your species has just arrived there. Wow, that's an incredible insight. That's why you gave Barbara Marx Hubbard that book. As I said, she actually called it Conscious Evolution. Of course she did. I told her to. Oh, I love it. So I'd like to get back to our conversation about ETs. How do these highly evolved beings organize themselves, if not in nations? How do they govern themselves? Well, they don't use evolution as their first guiding principle of evolution, but rather they have created a principle based on pure observation. They have simply observed that they are all one, and they have devised political, social, economic, and spiritual mechanisms which undergird rather than undermine that first principle. What does it look like in government, for instance? When there is only one of you, how do you govern yourself? Come again? When you are the only one there is, how do you govern your behavior? Who governs your behavior outside of yourself? No one. When I'm all alone, and if I were on a deserted island somewhere, for instance, no one outside of myself would govern or control my behaviors. I could eat, dress, do exactly as I want. I would probably not dress at all. I would probably eat whenever I was hungry and whatever felt good and made me feel healthy. I would do whatever I felt like doing. And some of that would be determined by what I thought I needed to do to survive. Well, as usual, you have all the wisdom within you. I've told you before, you have nothing to learn. You only have to remember. This is how it is in advanced civilizations. They run around naked picking berries and carving canoes. Those sound like barbarians. Well, who do you think is happier and closer to God? Oh, we've been through this before. Yes, we have. It's the mark of a primitive culture to imagine that simplicity is barbarian and complexity is highly advanced. Interestingly, those who are highly advanced see it as being just the other way around. Yet the movement of all cultures, indeed the process of evolution itself, is toward higher and higher degrees of complexity. In one sense, yes. Yes, there is the greatest divine dichotomy. The greatest complexity is the greatest simplicity. The more complex a system is, the more simple its design. Indeed, it is utterly elegant in its simplicity. The master understands this. That is why a highly evolved being lives in utter simplicity. It is why highly evolved systems are also utterly simple. Highly evolved systems of governance, highly evolved systems of education, highly evolved systems of economics or religion are utterly, elegantly simple. Highly evolved systems of governance, for example, involve virtually no governance at all, save self-governance. as if there is only one being participating, as if there is only one being affected, which is all there is, which highly evolved cultures understand precisely. I'm starting to put it all together now. Good. We have not much time left. You have to go? This book is getting very long.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Yep, you're a good reader.
You're welcome.
That's a fat chapter of information. And I know not everybody is from the U.S., but I know we all know the troubles that are going on around our planet. And I keep thinking about all the troubles that we have around our planet. And you know, God says the guiding principles are we are all one, and there is enough. And because of the state of the planet, I'm not sure how that works. I'd like to open that up for conversation. So if you would like to speak, just take yourself off mute and speak.
Well, one mention was made that the ego-based systems of man undermine the guiding principles of oneness. So we have to focus on getting our systems, our general systems, politics, education, social systems, etc., in harmony with the oneness. And then, of course, where would you start with each individual? It's sort of the idea of critical mass, building up towards that.
Well, that's a good point, because I just sitting here thinking of the U.S. government right now, and it's like every day it's something like, almost to the point that it's becoming not surprising. And go ahead.
No, Nanette, like, it's not just in the U.S. Like,
Oh,
look
I
at
know.
Venezuela, like all these things, now that we have this unity that's, come together really in the last 50 years, we're just becoming more aware of how spectacularly dysfunctional we become. And, I really think that, what's happening, I saw the news last night and what's happening in Europe, and it's becoming a desert. And the unity consciousness is going to stop giving their power away to really power over systems that don't work. I see what Neil's book says, Awaken the Species. I see it happening, and it's happening right now. If you focus on like the ridiculousness of of what's happening, especially like with Mr. Trump, like it's silly. He's trying to run a country the same way he ran a reality TV show.
Yep.
There's your beautiful face, Linda.
Yes.
Hi.
I just feel like we've just come right to it. This right here, what he's talking about in this book, is the pivotal point. And basically it's happening. The waking up is happening. And if we remember David Hawkins' theory is it only takes 2 people at 1,000 to wake the rest of the planet up. I don't know that those numbers are accurate, but we've got more than 200 awake people on the planet right now. And every person that wakes up and starts adopting this attitude of we're all one and there is enough. And we're the creators. It's what we decide, you know, and anything that we need can come to us instead of looking for it outwardly, if we look for it within. So we're creating it. I look at the time frame, because there is no time, but we look at like when this book came out and now the fourth book coming out, which I think is going to take it to the next level. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's everything that we need to know. And the people that will wake up and be a part of the awakening, and the people that stay asleep will just be a part of the awakening. They'll be the asleep ones.
Hi.
Hi, Anne. Thank you, Linda.
How are you today?
We're good. Thank you, Linda.
Well, interesting topic. So, let's say, all right, so what we're saying here is the truth is God, and that there's unity is there's only one God, and it doesn't matter what we call him, all right? What if we were simply, okay, like, you're the meaning, I'm the meaning, I'm the truth, but I'm also a mirage. What if in unity there is no dark and there is no light? We live in a polarity, okay? So there always has to be opposites. But what if in consciousness we could hold both poles at the same time, so that what he's talking about is mindfulness and observation and witnessing, just being witness to what's so, and just seeing it. What if we could just be polite about it? Okay, you have your point of view and I have my point of view. And I'm trying to formulate something, but it's the judgment. You see God my way, or there is no way we can live together. It's our judgments. So the consciousness has to come to the understanding of unity, which is to leave your beliefs behind, which is something that I can't see cultures. We're cultural imprints, and that's what carries us forward. So to be higher than that is to be beyond what your cultural imprint is, and to not just support something because it's your tribal information. So we're talking about an open-mindedness that has to happen, to where we can hold everything as, because every failure is your success. And everything that is what we perceive as dark or not right works itself out according to God's plan. It's all good because God's in charge. I don't think I'm formulating the right idea, what I'm trying to say, because it's an esoteric subject. But what if we could say yes to everything instead of, there has to be an open-mindedness. And that's what I see is where there's the block, is that there really is an open-mindedness. If you don't believe my way, or if you don't see it the way I do. So in other words, darkness is an illusion and light is an illusion in this world, because it's really the secret's within yourself. And if the secret's God, then you keep giving it to God. So the bottom line is love, because God is love. And that's every religion talks about love. And so that's the only answer. And getting everybody to a point where they can hold reality that way. Well, look at the Middle East. You know, it's the separation that's the cause. And God is not about separation. God is about that we are all one. Politics I can't answer to, because it also has to start with the consciousness to create something other than what's been before. And I don't see people being willing to leave everything behind to approach All right, let's try something different. But then you look at Trump, and he's the wild card, because talk about where we are in consciousness. We picked him for our president. Look at how desperate we were to find a different way. I mean, it's pretty insane. What about mercy? What about compassion? How do we hold in our hearts that for those we don't agree with, or those that have a different point of view? Why is my voice the only voice? Maybe your voice and my voice together have a solution, because definitely if my voice had a solution, we might be there by now. But obviously, I'm not the one with the solution, and that gets to critical mass. When enough people have a solution that they agree upon, then the more morphogenic field spreads it to another place, because of the energy that it creates. I hope I'm struggling here to just.
Yeah, I think you're doing a good job, and it's making my wheels turn. And
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
yeah, and
But it's like, if you want to know mind, if people aren't quiet and listen to their heart, but they're reacting to their minds all the time, then you can't break away and wake up from the tomb that we're in. We're in a trance. And the trance is what catches us. I watch myself taking care of my 95-year-old mother. I want to give her the mercy and the compassion, and I can't believe how emotional, and I keep losing it with her, not because of, I just can't let her have her truths, which are based in the 1900s, so to speak. I mean, she doesn't know what she's talking about, but that's the way it is for her. And she just, okay, everything is a reflection. What if you really see that the world is a reflection? I mean, we just have to really change. We have to change everything. What that means is we have to change our perception, that garbage can be treasure, that heaven can be hell, or hell can be heaven. We have to make this shift within ourselves, and why we're creating things the way that we're creating things. Obviously, self wins over God, because that's where the separation occurs. Me, I, my needs, my culture's needs, my family needs. But what if we all knew that we were all the beloveds, and that this is the state that we were all wanting to reach out to? So when you reach this, it's in your heart, and it's the secret in your heart. And that means living in the house of God. And that's, I think, what he's talking about is the holy walking, because love is the message. I don't know how the world can sing that song, but we have to begin somewhere. And I do think it begins with us. But knowing that I'm the question and I'm the answer, knowing that in my own way, I am the light, and I'm just a part of the light. But if you really get that, then there is no darkness, because everything is an illusion. So I'm the meaning and I'm the truth, but I'm also a mirage. It's the illusion. And somebody can take it from here because I'm repeating myself, but I mean, what if we're the moon, the stars, and the sun? It's like, how do we take responsibility? Okay, and the other thing I want to say is that God is qualities. Kabbalah says there's 72 names of God. Sufis say there are 99 names of God. But God is qualities, the qualities of mercy and compassion and justice and freedom. But there's also the other side, because there are two sides to everything. So it's just a different side of the coin. And when you're on one side of the coin, if you turn the coin over, you have the other side of the coin. So if you have a certain consciousness, you get to choose which side of the coin you want to hold. And that's perception, how you see it. Good luck.
yeah, agreed. You said a lot of really important things. And I'm going to read from what Sarah wrote in on the chat page. What Alton and Christine and Linda say is true. Also, the chapter suggests we move away from city culture into community culture, and that's something we can work on. And I want to say something about that before we continue discussing.
I just want to interject one thing, which is that we all are a cultural imprint. And
Yeah.
so, anyway, that's one of the points in here.
Correct.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay.
Thank
And I've noticed in my neighborhood, and I'm talking about my neighborhood, not my city, not just, there has been a lot more effort to do things with the neighbors. So I think that is happening. And I know that even on Global Oneness Day, or not Global Oneness Day, Awakening Day on the 12th of every month, I try to do my activity in my neighborhood, whether it's collecting for food for the poor or the homeless, whatever it is I'm doing. I try to keep it local so that when these people see me once a month, I mean, everybody was just wonderful. So that I want to say that about that. And then Christine says, at some point we have to come into divine faith and let nature run her show and dare to be the divine being that we are in unity and oneness, and we need to have deep and unconditional compassion for our humanity. Love ourselves free of all conditioning. In truth, we are each whole, sovereign, and free. Eternally innocent begins. And that was well said and resonates. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Pierre Pradervon, who has written a book called The Gentle Art of Blessing.
I love him.
Yep. And I think if there was something we did every day, and not as a group, because we're all busy, but when it's 11 minutes after the hour, stop and bless whatever it is you feel like blessing.
Well, but this concept, how about every minute blessing whatever happens to you? I mean, that's what I blanked out, but
Matt
I'll
Collins.
think of his name. Yes, thank you. You got it. Bless
Love
everything.
rises on the screen.
Yeah, like if what comes your way you don't really want, bless it, because knowing that it's going to bring something else. Bless everything. Just
And
see it
that
as
is what Unity says. Unity, Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, she cured herself of what they said she wasn't even going to live, and that was like 127 years ago. But as you bless the world, then the world becomes blessed, right? The innocence that we are got conditioned and programmed very, very early. And, the truth is, innocence is magical.
well, the other problem is anger, because anger is about, I'm not going to get what I want, or I'm going to lose something, in my opinion. When I was trying to heal from the Hep C and the liver disease, well, the liver represents anger. And being able to see where I resented things and to let go, I had to let go of all these positions that I held on to. What if the consciousness, and what this book is saying is it's all God. What if we realize that there really isn't a difference between our mind and our heart and our soul and the secret, the idea of we're all one and there's nothing but God, which brings us back to recognizing that we are all in a prison and that the only meaning and the only out is real love. So you have to go into yourself and find out what you want and who you are, as opposed to what you've been, all the cultural, all the stuff that is kind of like people that didn't grow up with religion and choose their religion have a easier time with God than people that are just, I was raised this way and so I continue raising this way. Like my mother, why did my mother cut off half the ham at Christmas every time she cooked it and waste the rest? and because what did her mother do, and what did her mother's mother do, and what does her mother's mother did, and when you go back, the ovens were just too small at the time, so they had to cut off the ham so it would fit. And for centuries, that's what happened, and nobody questioned.
Yep. Well, I think we're definitely in a questioning phase. And this chapter has got, I mean, it's, like I said before, it's a thick, like loaded chapter.
Each one is, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And
Most of them are.
yeah, yeah, most of them are.
But in particular, this one addresses the sign of the times.
Yes, because I thought the part that Linda read where Neil says, "Oops, you lost me," and then God goes on to try to clarify, and about the survival of the fittest, and the guiding principle of evolution is evolution, and so the species is announcing we evolve by the principle of, well, evolution. But they never say what that principle is because they
But
have.
the principle is always love.
Yep.
Heart to heart.
Let me finish, please. And
Yes,
then
I'm not going to interrupt anymore. Okay.
And so the species is announcing we evolve by the principles of, well, evolution. But they never say what that principle is because they have confused the process and the principle. The species, on the other hand, which has become clear that evolution is a process, but a process over which the species has control, has not confused process with principle, but consciously chooses a principle which is used to guide and direct its process. This is called conscious evolution, and he goes on about Barbara Marx Hubbard. I think from taking some really difficult courses in philosophy in college, where I would read something like that, and I'd be like, oh my God, how am I? And the professor would say, but tomorrow you need to come in and you need to write a one-page paper showing me that you understand this. Well, I would be like, oh my Lord. And I mean, oftentimes I got it right, but there were other times where it was like, nope, you missed it altogether. So it's worth reading some of these parts of these chapters. And, you know, I think what I may do with book 4 is keep a journal so that I can do something like that along the way. And to help me better understand, because I know if I'm reading it by myself, I can absorb what I can absorb. But when I'm with the group, I can hear different points of view on it, which makes it easier to understand.
That's the same for me, Nanette. That's why I love this group so much, and I'm so grateful that we've been together for so many years.
It's been a fun ride.
Well, I do want to say something about that. It's, for me, it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of this group because of the level that you guys hold love in your heart and the level of how you want to change the world, but in a way that is with justice and freedom, mercy. It's very special. What if the group grew and the conscious mass realized that everybody just wants the love? All the fighting it's like, it's ironic.
Yep, I agree. And we're at the top of the hour, but I want to read something Sarah wrote. What I want to celebrate in the CWG books is all the plays on words that God introduces. Someone should go through and note all of them. For example, remembering. There are so many illuminating. They are so illuminating, and I love them. And I agree. You know, when we're reading, if I write my books, so I just underline stuff and put little asterisks. But I think that's a good idea, that when you see one of those in the reading, either write it down in a notebook or mark it on the pages of your book. So thanks for that suggestion, Sarah.
And I just want to say something before we go. I think the really important takeaway from this chapter is to realize that each of us individually is the universe. And so when we make the change within ourselves, we are changing the universe. We're creating the space for others to change. We're creating the petri dish for them. We're creating the right environment. And I think it's really important not to worry about what everybody else is doing. I think we get caught up. I heard Anne say something about, I just don't think other people are going to blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. It's not for us to worry about. They're their own gods. They're their own individual expression of God and in their own divinity, and they will figure it out on their own. It's not for us to figure it out for anybody other than ourselves. And as we figure it out for ourselves, we are figuring it out and setting the light for the world.
That's exactly true, Linda. And it's like Michael Bernard Beckwith says, you know, there's no point in worrying because everybody's going to make it out alive, because in truth, there is no death, right?
Exactly.
I would like,
Exactly.
in response to what you said, that is so beautiful and right on. And yes, and thank you for correcting my.
Well, I don't mean
line.
to correct it.
But I have a suggestion though. Since it lays on us, how about the fact that every time we see or we feel or we recognize the love in our heart, that we thank God, and this is a chance to send mercy to people who cannot understand. So you just take, in other words, it's coming from you. You find it in you, and we're a pebble in the water. That's all. And, that was just my suggestion, like what you were suggesting about the journaling, is just keep recognizing every time you feel that love that comes through in your heart, and thank God for it.
Well, and we're all on a journey towards unconditional self-love. Every day I ask myself to marry me, and I recognize, here I am, and I have to do it every day. And because it's my destiny to connect, because when I love myself unconditionally, then I'm loving myself as God, right?
You're also loving everyone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, there's no sending mercy to anybody, because then now we're back into a separation concept. It's all within ourselves. We reach everybody else through what goes on within us, because there isn't anything else.
And we are each the best lover for each appearing separate one that there could ever be.
Yep.
And what a concept. Would you marry yourself?
I marry myself every single day.
Do you
I'm
exchange
just
rings?
saying, what a question to ask, would you marry you?
Well, I
Great.
ask myself to marry me and thus fulfill my destiny. That's it. I promise always to be true, self-love, self-honor, I am due.
Well, that was
Well,
nice. And on that
Yes.
note, you guys, we're going to end because we're 5 minutes over time.
Okay, love you all. See
All
you
right.
next week.
Love you,
You
everybody.
too.
And thank you, Alton, for joining the group. And thank you,
Yes, good to
Christine,
see you, Alton.
Linda,
Bye.
Kirsten.
Happy day.
Everybody.
okay,
Bye.
and Sarah,
Blessed day.
and Ann. All right, you too. Love you
Bye.
all.
Bye.
Love you too.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kirsten.